Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to announce that Smooth Sack Summer is officially upon us. When you're playing in the summer sun, make sure you're groomed from pubes to bum. Thanks to our friends at Manscaped, you can make this season your smoothest yet. The Performance Package 5.0 Ultra is the ultimate bundle to keep your boys downstairs cool while looking hot. Join the 10 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped with our exclusive offer. Get 20% off plus free shipping when you go to manscaped.com and use code THPN. Summertime and the trimmin' is easy. The Manscaped Performance Package 5.0 Ultra has everything you need to prepare that summer bod. Inside this package, you'll find the star of the show, the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra. Their 5th generation trimmer features 2 interchangeable next-gen skin-safe blade heads, a standard one for taking a little off the top, and a new foil blade to go smooth wherever your heart desires. Now that you have the perfect haircut, use Manscaped's liquid formulations to keep the freshness even at the hottest summer barbecues. The Crop Soother Aftershave Lotion and Crop Preserver Anti-Chafe Ball Deodorant. Once they touch your sack, you'll never go back. Get 20% off plus free shipping with code THPN at manscaped.com. That's 20% off plus free shipping with code THPN at manscaped.com. It's Smooth Sack Summer, boys. Get on board or get left behind. What's up, and welcome to another episode of the Grindline Podcast. Here's episode 281. I'm your host, Greg. I'm here tonight with Ryan. And I'm with Tyler. And guys, I've been in like the woods for like 4 days, like trying to follow the draft and everything. And then I come home for 2 days to follow free agency. And then I head back out camping for like another 5 days. So it's been a hell of a week for me to literally follow anything. Like, are you guys okay?
No. Man, I was able to watch first round, and then it's been a hectic weekend. And heck, even just before sitting down, I just learned that we signed somebody else. So it has been one of those weeks for me in particular. I mean, you were out of town. I was busy, family stuff. Tyler, you're young and can do whatever you want. So I'm sure you actually enjoyed whatever you were doing.
Yeah, I've been going to a lot of minor league baseball games, to be honest with you. We got a team here, so been doing a little bit of that. Relaxing, just got my insurance license and stuff, so that's all squared away now. So we are celebrating a little bit, but
You can go sell
yeah,
houses with Danny DeKaiser.
exactly. Get my real estate license next. No. Uh,
I think is Drew Miller doing insurance, Tyler?
He is. Actually, I had a conversation with when I used to work at Hanover, which was Citizens. I had a conversation with him over the phone because he was one of the agents I dealt with. And anyways, he was cool. I told them about our podcast and whatnot. So, anyways, but I'm doing good. There is obviously a lot to talk about. There's a lot happening. I have been able to pay attention to a lot of it. But as you guys, I'm pretty busy this week, and where the 4th of July sits is kind of not an ideal situation. I wish it was on a Friday so I could enjoy it a little bit more, but we get out a little early tomorrow, so I can't complain too much. But other than that, I mean, the draft, we'll see what those guys turn out to, and then obviously we have some free agency to talk about.
Yeah, for the draft, that's kind of where I want to start tonight. We'll get to free agency after the break. Drafting Michael Brandsegg-Nygård at number 15 overall. I think that was kind of a safe pick. That is what everyone had us projected to pick. There were still some guys on the board that I probably would have taken over him, like Cole Iserman. Cole Iserman was available. Michael Hagee was available. That was another guy. I thought that this was probably the year where you could go with a guy where you could say this guy's got a ton of like offensive upside. He could be a pure goal scorer, could be a 40-goal guy possibly. But they played it safe. They went with Michael Brandsegg-Nygård, 6'1", 207-pound right shot. He's a winger. He was mocked anywhere between 6 by Tony Ferrari to 17 by Bob McKenzie and Craig Button. He is being touted for his shot. That being said, I don't think like you're really lucky if he's like a 25 to 30 goal scorer in the league at his peak. I think he has mid to top 6 potential. But he's big, he's heavy, he's kind of player that's going to get like he's like I think he might be a better shooting, more physical Marco Casper, but a winger. I said that when I was talking to the guys from Hockeytown Rundown, I think my best description was that if you could get him to be what you wanted Anthony Mantha to be, if he could be Anthony Mantha with work ethic and no ego, that's like a huge win for you. but I think that's kind of his projection. Like everyone keeps saying, man, he's got an amazing shot. Man, he's got an amazing shot. And it's a booming shot and it's hard and it's fast. But if he can at least get 25 goals a season, I think you're making your money there. Because he played in the Hockey Allsvenskan 41 games last season for Moira, 8 goals, 10 assists for 18 points. In international play, all international play, he played 13 games, had 9 points, 7 goals, 2 assists. So there's offense there, but I just think that was a safe pick. He's the Yzerman build right now where I thought they could have gone more offensive. I'm not mad about it, but I think there was a different direction they could have gone, but they chose to play it safe.
I'm totally fine with it overall. I mean, on the surface, you think he's Swedish with the name, right? But it turns out he's Norwegian.
First Norwegian player to get picked in the first round.
Yeah, which is kind of crazy. You thought with Matt Zuccarello and stuff like that a couple of years ago that their hockey program was going to start to, progress, and I guess it has. They have their first round pick. It looks like he's going to be in the SHL this year with AIK. So we'll see where that goes. I mean, like I said, I like the size, I like the physicality that he brings, and if he can bring some offense and get in the top mix and be an impact forward, you'll be happy with that.
Yeah, he's going to go play with Axel Sandin Palika and Skellefteå AIK over in the SHL, which is now the Red Wings team. It used to be Frölunda. We have now slowly transited with Frölunda to Rögle, and now we're going to Skellefteå in the SHL for our team of choice because we're going to have at least 2 players over there. Ryan, does the pick of Brandsegg-Nygård really do anything for you? Or like I was saying, it's the safe pick, right?
I mean, you can argue it's a safe pick, but it's a big body power forward. I mean, this kid is 6'1", 207 for elite prospects already. I'll be intrigued what he's weighed in at for this week with development camp going on. And to the point of ASP and him playing together later this season, they're getting their first taste of each other this weekend or these last couple of days. So I like it. I mean, you've got a skilled shooting forward, one of which we saw them just pick up in the trade when they got rid of Gibson. So you can kind of see the trend that they're going toward because we know already that they're so deep in the defensive core. I know that they've got to replenish a bit for Grand Rapids, but now you're just adding to things that over the next several years Detroit's going to be focusing on. So I like the pick. People can be upset about it, I guess, but it is what it is. I mean, there's some guys that we've talked about, in particular, Cole Yzerman, that would have been probably awesome. But the way that they approached the first round the last several years, I struggle to be upset with what they just did. So
what's one thing I want to say, and I don't want to say that this rubs me the wrong way. I kind of, on one hand, I like how bold Steve Yzerman is and how he's got the guy he wants. He sees him, he takes him. But at the same time, there's projections of guys that are going to go where he is going to go. And it feels like you overthink it sometimes. I can't think of a specific example right now because obviously Steve Yzerman hasn't been here long enough where you've seen the fruits of the labor just yet. But I mean, in terms of projections, you don't know where those guys are going to be. But like Cole Yzerman was there for the taking. If Cole Yzerman becomes a 45 goal scorer, you're going to be like, what the fuck are we doing? And I guess that's a double-edged sword. I mean, like I said, that's I guess the best way to put it. It's a double-edged sword. If you're damned if you take him and he turns into a Philip Zadina, and you're damned if you don't take him and he turns into a Patrick Kane who's scoring 45 goals a season and lighting up the NHL. So I mean, it's tough to say. Obviously, there's been millions of times where you're like, "Oh, this guy is great," and this guy was so good in juniors and blah blah blah. And then you look 5 years down the road and you look at waivers on June 30th, and it's like, "Oh wow, this guy turned into a bust. These guys aren't even being qualified." So it's hard to project. It's one of the hardest things in sports, I think, to project draft picks in the NHL because you just don't know.
yeah, I like your point there mentioning Zadina. I'm glad you said that because that's where I was going to go with it. Because the last time that we all saw a prolific goal scoring winger fall in the draft was him. And if you're one of the people that tries to say that we should not have picked him, that's a small percentage because I remember how excited majority of the people were when that took place and how quickly everyone was like, Philip Zadina, go, pick him, do it. Even with Quinn Hughes still on the board, because we all thought at that point was Zadina would have gone in the top 4, top 5, and then Quinn Hughes is hopefully going to fall right into Detroit's lap, and it didn't happen. But it's history. Would it have been awesome had we landed Quinn Hughes at that point? Sure. Would it have been awesome if we did the same with Yzerman? Sure, because the names match, they're spelled different, but it's the nostalgia aspect. Maybe we got hooked up too much on that. It's known what he did with the U.S. national development team that I think probably helped rub people the wrong way because we've seen the pure goal scorers come from that team and actually do well. So I think that's maybe where a lot of folks are upset because they've seen it consistently here the last couple of years. Whereas, man, we really need to get MBN. We need a nickname for him. Nygaard, it's not the familiar name. It's the safe name, kind of like what you mentioned, but it's not what the flashy aspect goal scoring thing is that people were really probably clamoring for. And I get it. You can go either way. And to, like you said, Tyler, we're not going to know for potentially a couple of years, but you've got a kid with this size already. Now, if he can just not be a Bambi and put it all together quickly, we could see him a lot sooner in Detroit or even Grand Rapids than we may expect.
I think the frustrating part is too, I feel like you see like a team like Philadelphia, right? Like the Flyers were told last year that there was no chance that Matvei Michkov was coming to the NHL. And then boom, on June 30th, oh wow, he's signing an entry level deal. And it's like, wow, man. Like a guy like that, jumps right into their lineup and who knows what he's gonna do. But you've seen this example already before with Kaprizov, right? Kaprizov comes to the NHL and he's automatically a stud. I can understand why Red Wings fans are like, man, why can't we just finally fucking draft someone that like makes the team? Kind of like a Dylan Larkin, where he made the team out of camp and he's stuck. Why can't we get a guy like that?
We did, and Lucas Raymond.
Okay, right. Raymond is probably the only exception at this point, and Seider, obviously, but I'm talking about forward-wise at this point. And I can understand why people are a little frustrated. I get it, but at the same time, it's like I remember when Steve Yzerman got here. I remember coming on this podcast, and you can go back and check it if you want to. But I remember saying, look at the team now, because the team that you see now is not going to be the team that hoists the Stanley Cup down the road or makes the playoffs down the road. You're going to have some uncomfortable players that leave.
I feel like you're going on a rant that has nothing to do with what we were talking about now at this point.
Right. No, but what I'm saying is, at the end of the day, the sexy pick isn't always the best one. So that's kind of what my moment was. Sorry.
Way to loop that around. But Ryan, what I was saying before is when you had to walk away to do children's stuff, is that I think
wipe a butt
with Brandsegg-Nygård, I think that if he can be what we hoped Anthony Mantha would be without the ego and with the work ethic, I think that's probably his kind of peak right there. Is if he could be a consistent 25 to 30 goal scorer that hits people, runs to the corners, gets pucks, parks in front of the net, deflects goals, is just big, mean, nasty power forward. I think that is probably his peak. I know people are like, we need a top 6, like 40 goal scorer. I think he has a possibility at his floor to be a mid 6 and at his ceiling to be a top 6. And I think that's going to be his bread and butter, is just being super hard to play against while also throwing in offense.
And to that point, I love the player type line that Elite Prospects has added: physical forward, power forward, two-way forward. And that last one is what we've heard really since day one with Yzerman, and we've heard it reiterated with Alone. Are they playing a 200-foot game? I know that there are some players that aren't, the expectation is not there for them to do so. However, guys like Patrick Kane and Alex DeBrincat, they have made that mindset shift, if you will, to dedicate themselves. Is it every game? No. Is the expectation that it's going to be every game? No, because we're hoping that they're putting points on the board and helping this team score more goals to victory. But there are certain aspects last season, I remember talking about them in particular, where their defensive play helped essentially spark that team to a win. And if you got more players like a Nygaard here that can help push that, that's the recipe that they're building. And it's what we've seen Yzerman essentially moving toward with a lot of the moves he's made the last several years.
Yeah, no, they did take a stretch pick with the second round pick, number 47 overall in Max Plant. His dad is famous NHL player Derek Plant, played for a few different organizations through his career. Max played for the US NTDP 25 games with 29 points, and for the US National Under 18 team 51 games played, 61 points. This is a guy that I think does have high offensive upside if he can hit it. The player types listed on Elite Prospects are cerebral tactician, playmaker, and two-way forward. It says he's one of the most skilled passers in the draft, especially off the backhand. And I think that this is a guy that he was mocked as low as 105 by THN's Kennedy. And the highest he was mocked was 47. No, 33 by Craig Button, but 47 by FC Hockey, where we took him. He's 5'11", 176 pounds. So for a 5'11" guy, that's a decent weight. Say he puts on another 15 pounds, maybe he puts on a couple inches. This is a dude where you are saying, yes, we're drafting him for upside. Like that's a kid who could pop off. And the US NTDP has been pumping out some really good players. So I think most picks from there are decently safe. The other guy I wanted to touch on that I thought was an awesome pick, and he was another one that you're like, this might be not a reach, but he was a double re-entry. He was mocked as low as 250 and as high as 56. So there's a gap for you. 256 to 250, which is Andre Beecher. He's 20 years old. He's 6'1", 187 pounds. Actually played several seasons in Czechia before coming over to the WHL. His first season in WHL, which is really just acclimating to North American ice, in 63 games played, had 16 goals and 22 assists for 38 points. Last season in 58 games played, had 32 goals and 64 assists for 96 points. And in all international play, 13 games, had 4 goals and 10 assists for 14. It says he's going to go back to Prince George, but the cool thing is that he's 20, does not have to go back to CHL. This kid can go right to Grand Rapids. We can see how he can tear it up in Grand Rapids. This is a pick I'm actually like, out of all of the picks, this is probably the one for me that is the most like exciting because it can go one of two ways. This kid's either an AHL lifer or we got a steal at pick 80 and like a double re-entry who just put it all together, who finally got used to the game on this side of the ocean, and he's just going to rip it up. And this guy is really exciting to me.
Craig Button had him mocked at 56.
Yeah, so I mean, he could be a steal too, right? Like,
I mean, I like it. Your point in particular about him being able to go straight to the AHL, because Detroit right now has 11 per Puckpedia, which is I'm still getting used to it. I like it. I think it's already changed quite a bit since they've taken things over, quote unquote, because Cap Friendly's still going for 3 days. They need the forward help because if I'm not mistaken, nothing's come back on Zarnik and Luff. I haven't seen anything happen with them. Hiroshi's still in the air. They got Burgers down there. He's been tendered, but we'll wait to see if either he or Veleno choose to go to arbitration, which would be a good thing because that opens up a potential buyout window, because I'm kind of still surprised that Detroit didn't buy anybody out. But I also get why they didn't go into free agency to make sure they're not completely handcuffed. So going back, though, Beecher, if he could make his way to Grand Rapids, that's a huge win. Because why, you ask? There's guys like Marco Casper and Nate Danielson that we are hoping, knock on wood over here, can maybe crack the roster this season. Especially the way that we saw what we saw from Nate Danielson. I mean, I think that the opportunity is there. And Tyler, you hinted at this a little bit ago with the Larkin type move, where we what we saw last year in the preseason was like, oh baby, this could be fun. And then of course the rules sucked and he had to go back to the CHL because they weren't going to do the Rasmussen with him. But I think that all eyes are on him kind of at this point. And I'm not trying to say they're not on Casper as well, but he's got, I think, a more patient path I think, with the fans, and you could argue some of the folks in Grand Rapids as well. Danielson, we only got a little bit of a taste, and I like when we were talking to Dan a couple weeks back about his comments there, where they just threw him into the fire, and what did he do? He took it and he went with it. So there's opportunity there for Beecher to go into Grand Rapids and maybe have a depth impact role on that team, and I think that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, the other direction the Red Wings went. So we had talked when I had talked to Brock Otten from McKean's. I said this is going to be, in my opinion, is going to be a forward heavy draft. It was. The Red Wings drafted 5 forwards, 2 defensemen, and a goalie. There's some depth in there. Everyone takes a goalie. Landon Miller was the goalie pick this season. Landon Miller is a 6'5", 194-pound goalie who catches left. Was drafted in the 4th round. He played for the Sioux Greyhounds in the OHL last season. Had an .889 save percentage and a .279 goals against. The .279 goals against is not bad. The .889 save percentage is not great. So he's got work to do. I mean, again, you've got Augustine, you've got Kosa. You're not really trying to like try super hard to hit on a goalie this season. And then you drafted a couple defensemen. Overall, the draft to me was good. I'll take it. If you can hit on 2 guys out of it, I mean, that's a win. But I think the biggest part is, like we were saying, Beecher could go to the AHL. This is a guy who can drop in and replace a player who's probably going to graduate this season. I think that's the big part of it. There were no super blockbuster moves that I thought happened on trade night. Overall, I think it was or on draft night. Overall, I think it was a pretty standard draft. Though the presentation at the Sphere was fucking sweet.
Dude,
Like,
that was amazing.
it was awesome.
Like, if there was a thing that the NHL did where they kept it there to turn that into a tourist trap. Now, do I want one in Detroit? Yes, obviously. But that was superb. And just watching it on TV was incredible. That thing is amazing.
Yeah. It's even more amazing. And like, if you have not gone, like, I hate when I went to Vegas, it was my first time going to Vegas. The city sucks. Like, Vegas is the worst. Unless you're a gambler, it's awful. It's dirty and it's terrible. And
I want to
everything's
go
awful.
just to see it. I don't
Yeah.
gamble.
Well, that's what you got to do. You got to go.
Wait,
once
Ryan,
to-
you've never been?
No. Hey,
No.
you'd be surprised how many people have never been to Vegas.
I went as like a 12-year-old for the NASCAR race.
That's even worse. But you have to go at least once to prove to yourself that it's terrible. But the Sphere, I saw like a crazy video in the Sphere where you're like sitting and going through like the evolution of like Earth, and like, it's nuts. The just venue as a whole is insane. And that presentation the NHL did, I give them props because it was super cool.
It was kind of freaky. It was like Brady Bunch on steroids at one point. Did you see when they put all the players' heads up on the board?
Yes. And just imagine that, because it's like IMAX to like the nth degree in there, because literally it's an entire screen all the way around you. It's pretty crazy, and it's super steep. So like there's parts in the video where you're like going over a cliff and there were people like gripping onto their seats and freaking out because it felt like you were going to fall off.
So it's like sitting up on the upper level at LCA.
Worse. It's worse.
Oh.
It's worse. We're going to take a quick break. Message from DraftKings. We will be back to talk about free agency, our thoughts so far, and hopefully everyone calms the hell down. So we'll be back after a quick message from DraftKings. The chase for the Stanley Cup continues, and the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL, is just as hot as it is on the ice. With same-game parlays, live betting, odds boosts, and so much more, don't miss out as the Stanley Cup playoffs wind down. And if you're new to DraftKings, you got to check this out. New customers bet $5 to get $150 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code 2HPN. That's code THPN for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings, the crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER, or in West Virginia, visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPENY, or text HOPENY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly on behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas. 21 plus, age varies by jurisdiction, void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. See dkng.co/ice for eligibility and deposit restrictions, terms, and responsible gaming resources. Copyright NHL 2024, all rights reserved. And we're back. And we are going to need everyone to like take a chill pill. Is that what we say that anymore? Everyone to calm the fuck down. Free agency, day one of free agency completed. We are now through day 2 of free agency. It is now July 2nd. The Detroit Red Wings made a couple moves so far, a few moves, actually, a few. Shane Gostisbehere is gone. Jake Wallman is gone. We've talked about this already. We have brought in Erik Gustafsson. That was the one move that everyone started, that started the snowball where people started freaking out, I think. We signed Cam Talbot today, just literally like almost an hour ago. The Red Wings signed Tyler Motte, low value contract. These are moves, guys. Like, I guess we can start with the day was kicked off by Steven Stamkos. Like, that was the big thing. And
Ooh, was it ever?
I would not have signed that Steven Stamkos contract with the position the Red Wings are in. 4 years at, what was it, over $8 million a year?
4 by 8.
Yeah, we're not in a position to do that. Like, that is not our window. Our contention window is not 4 years of Steven Stamkos.
Neither is Nashville, though, really.
No, but that's Nashville. Barry Trotz wanted to go take his dick out in front of everyone and try and sign as many players as possible. And he did that. And will it help them? Yes, but I can't say today that Nashville is a cup contender because of the moves that he made. Like,
they could be.
They will be better.
They've got the goaltending that can put them there. Now they've built around that a little bit.
Sure, but they will be better, yes. But I can't say that the big names that they signed, and now that they have literally like no money left to do anything.
They have $595,000 in current cap space.
That's no money to do anything else. So that the Stamkos contract kicked everything off, and it was followed by a bunch of other signings where I said, yeah, good thing Yzerman didn't do that. I wouldn't have signed that contract because it's either too much term or too much money. And there was a lot of money. I think they said over $1 billion were thrown around on day one.
Easy record.
And Yzerman went and got Erik Gustafsson. He today went and got Tyler Motte. He got Cam Talbot. And people freaked out. But the situation I keep going back to is, remember last season when we signed a bunch of people and people freaked out because there wasn't any room for prospects to play? And now you sign some depth pieces, some guys like Gustafsson, who's absolutely going to help the defensive part of the game. You know, when Yzerman in his postseason presser kept saying, we need to be better defensively. We need to tighten up. It all starts with allowing less goals. You know what's going to allow less goals? An offense or defensive liability in Shane Gostisbehere being removed, and a defensive plus in Erik Gustafsson being inserted. A defensive liability in, or a goaltending liability in James Reimer being removed, and a goaltending plus in Cam Talbot being added. Tyler Motte, who is, I'm going to say, one of probably the best defensive players in the league, one of the, honestly, and it's a 99% penalty kill war for Tyler Motte, a bottom six dude who is going to not let pucks go in the net when he's on the ice. You had one of the leagues, you had a top half of the league offense last season. You had, I believe it was the 9th most goals per game in the entire league last season. And you can remove some offense to add in defense. And that is what Yzerman has done so far. Now, there are still moves to be made. We have too many defensemen. We still need a top 6 forward. The Patrick Kane signing, we'll talk about that too. Great move. A whole season of Simon Edvinsson. You need to take a step back because too many people immediately knee-jerk reaction and were just pissy beyond belief without actually looking at the whole picture.
Yeah, no, I just think what sucks is, you know, you get told by the media that this is the year the Wings are going to do this. This is the year the Wings are going to sign this guy, that guy. And I think what people need to start taking a step back, myself included, because I think we all get wrapped up into this, is as much as Elliot Friedman knows and as much as Dreger and all these guys
he doesn't know nothing about Detroit. Nothing.
They know some stuff, but they don't know everything. And you know, the fact that they said that Patrick Kane was probably going to resign, he said that a couple of days before free agency started. He knew. But my thing is I feel like a lot of people, their knee-jerk reaction is to get upset right away instead of just saying, keep this in the back of your mind when you're thinking of July 1st. More mistakes are made on July 1st than good signings are made on July 1st. And I'll stop with that.
Well, there's a reason I went back and checked out when the trade for DeBrincat happened because that got leaked early. And Detroit was mentioned, but obviously none of us thought that that was going to take place. That's where we're now currently at with the Jacob Trouba thing. But Greg, you mentioned it, and it's confusing at this point with what people want. Is you want to spend all this money on these names that would have been great 5 years ago. I mean, you could argue that the same about Patrick Kane. But the reality of the situation is we have all these young guys in Grand Rapids, and they were and all you got to do is go back to the debacle of a night on trade deadline with Detroit and Arizona. Yzerman blasted the team, stating they needed to be better. However, also stated that they're going to look internally at a lot of their moves as things that they could do. Did much happen? No. We had Evanson. We got to hang our hat on that and loved every bit of it. But now look to where things are a little bit this season and some of the players that are now gone, and look at some of the players that we've been hyping up and talking about in Grand Rapids. Maybe one of these guys or couple, there could be a handful of guys cracking this roster this season. Because right now, after that Mott signing, Detroit still only has 9 forwards signed. That's not including Veleno, because he still needs to get his contract figured out. That's not including Burgers. He's still got to get his shit figured out. Lucas Raymond still needs a contract. They were all tendered. They all went through that legal aspect, if you will, but they still need to get deals. And that only puts you right at 12. And I don't think they're going to carry just 12 forwards this season. And that's not even a guarantee that that we see Burgers up here, but that's the hope. I think that the way that things are structured, you can still make that attempt. Is there still a trade in the works? It could be. The Trouba thing is just there at this point. Would I like it? Yes. But they need things to do on the defensive side as well. Because now once they sign Sider, they've got 8 guys in Detroit. And actually, yeah, it'd be 8 because Legason is showing with the Detroit roster on Puckpedia, but we know that's going to drop down and Albert Johansson's going to be bumped up. So they're going to be having 8 defensemen at the moment. So in theory, things got to change. But do you want the young guys that we've been seeing the last couple of years and really excited about playing? Or do you want the flashy long-term free agent signing that might bite you in the ass in 3 years? Did I want Stamkos? Yes, absolutely. Would that have been freaking awesome? 100%. But 4 years, $8 million, that takes him to 38, 39.
It's tough.
It just sucks to get beat out by someone like Nashville.
I get it, but and it's a double-edged sword though. Like you're risking a lot. And Greg, you mentioned it. We're not at the point to play the risk game. Do we want the splashy forward? Yeah, I do too. If you don't, then you're probably kind of crazy. But there's also quite the potential free agency class coming up this next offseason that could very well impact what's Detroit doing. So, well, it's a wait and see for me. I've hammered home for a long time, but I think this is the offseason that kind of makes or break where Yzerman's kind of trying to take the team. I'm not there yet, but it's gonna be it's a big one because we need to see a youth push, and maybe this could be that year, and it's going to be a tough pill to swallow potentially.
Ryan, what did I tell you when we did the Jake Wallman episode? I said, I am not going to get high on what the talking heads online are saying because they don't know anything. Because what did they say as soon as they traded Wallman? So Yzerman's cooking something. He's got something going. There's a big move coming.
He still might be.
Sure.
Could be.
But nothing's happened yet. And I said, I am not going to get myself pumped up for that and to have nothing happen. Because Yzerman doesn't just give away picks. Sure. So there's another half to the Jake Wallman.
Are debatable at this point with most folks.
Well,
Wallman.
Whatever. Wallman was gone for one of two reasons. Either there's another big move coming or there was something else happening behind the scenes that we don't know. Those are the only 2 reasons.
The weird thing about the Wallman thing, just quickly, it felt like he was a part of the future like the immediate future and maybe even a little bit further down the road too. That's why like I was very confused with it.
Never assume anything. That's the biggest problem.
No,
Never
you're right.
assume anything. So I said I'm not going to get myself too pumped up because the talking heads with Yzerman know absolutely nothing. They have no idea what his plans are. Like no one had said anything about the Tyler Mott signing. The Red Wings were the first one to tweet it. Like that's normally what happens.
Would you be shocked if in 5 minutes you got an alert saying the Red Wings traded for X player? I wouldn't be.
No, not at
Yeah.
all.
That's just how he is.
So I want to look at Erik Gustafsson. Erik Gustafsson has an EV offensive WAR of 82% and EV defensive WAR of 90% last season. Those are good numbers. He has a high goal percentage at 71. He has a finishing WAR of 66, which is okay. But he's got good exit success. He's got a really high passer rating, 90% on his passes. He has a 57% entry denial. He has a 58% possession entry prevention. He is a very good defensive defenseman, or at least was last season. And he has there's some offense to his game. Last season for the Rangers in 76 games played, had 6 goals and 25 assists for 31 points. He's been around the league for a very long time. He said he's watched Mo Seider and loves Mo's game. He says he hasn't watched much of Simon Edvinsson yet, but he's really excited to see what he can do. It's a guy who he knows Alex DeBrincat. He knows Patrick Kane. He talked to both of them before coming here. 32 years old, 6'1", 189 pounds. He's just a dude who's going to help you defensively. He's part of what Yzerman needs to shift to now. We've got offense. We have a full year of Patrick Kane coming, like hopefully a full year after an entire offseason of actual hockey training, which he wasn't able to do. He did an entire offseason of rehab. Those are two completely different things. You're getting a whole season of Simon Edvinsson. You add a guy like this in to help improve your defense. And then people are like, this sucks. I don't want this pick. Who is this guy? And we're like, just go look at what he's done and what he's coming here to do after hearing what Yzerman said we needed.
Well, they're also just completely overlooking the fact that Albert Johansson's going to be on the I shouldn't say
That too
making this
should be.
roster. Ideally, he's making your third pairing, and that's not a bad thing because ultimately that turns into a young guy free agent signing because they did sign him. Don't get me wrong, but this is a guy that we have seen the last couple of years, and I remember talking to Jen in particular. He has been one of the more sound defenders in Grand Rapids the last 2 years. What does Detroit need? That type of player. And he can still bring the offense. Gustafsson, you can almost argue those two are one and the same type of player. And to me, those young guys, like we look at Ed, we look at Johansson, that goes back to what I just stated a little bit ago in Arizona, where you're going to essentially look internally to make some of these moves. And in a way, that's what Detroit's doing.
I think a lot of people are going to be happy with Gustafsson. I mean, I believe just looking at his stats, he had 60 points in 18-19. So he's not going to do that again. But, he's great defensively and he put up 31 points last year with the Rangers. I think he was on their second pair last year at one point.
I think he can float, but he can go.
Yeah.
He can play at any point in the lineup. I think that's what's going to be key.
And that's the kind of guy Steve Yzerman wants in this lineup, especially on the back end. That can kind of kill penalties, but also quarterback the power play if needed, or even power play 2 if needed. Like this is where the versatility comes into play. And everyone just kind of looks at one contract and like, oh yeah, this guy sucks. It's like, no, this guy's been in the NHL for 11 years. He had a bunch of years with Chicago, a year with Calgary. I remember one with Philly. So he's been around the NHL for a long period of time. And this is one of those guys that like you need to solidify your back end. I mean, again, it's not Trouba, right? It's not Trouba yet, but that still could be in the works. We don't know what Steve Yzerman's cooking up or if he's even cooking something up. But even if he's not, he's a good signing.
Yeah. So the one thing in particular that I think that they're likely looking at 273. That's their goals against this past year. They scored 275 goals. I think one of our predictions was that we were hoping for under of what, 240, 250 for goals against. That cost them a lot this past season. We can argue that most of it, I would think we can all agree upon, was due to defensive breakdowns and this unit just looking lost and not really understanding. Maybe it was the system, maybe it was the pairings. I'm not really sure, but defensively they weren't good enough. And more often than not, someone like Alex Lyon was bailing them out. Huso early on bailed them out. James Reimer, for all the grief that he got, bailed them out. And that these types of moves, like I go back to Johansson, he's a defensive type player. Edvinsson, he's a two-way defenseman. Gustafsson, arguably a two-way defenseman, but they can do it in situations. We're going to find out real quick what Johansson and Edvinsson have for a full season, and I think that's going to be awesome. Yes, there's still a Justin Hall and a Jeff Petrie. I get it. Ben Sherratt, but we saw how much actually better Sherratt and Sider looked last season because they just actually got comfortable and understood what each other was going to do. That can only be what your hope is at this point for several of these other guys if no other moves are made. Should there be a move? Yes, but that's just us being anxious as fans and getting to the point of we want playoffs. So I don't know.
I'm going to talk about another guy who's apparently going to bail them out this season. Signing Cam Talbot. Cam Talbot, actually, I had preferred Cam Talbot over Andrew Gibson, who they were rumored to be going after. He's older, so Cam Talbot is 36. He will be 37 in 3 days. July 5th is Cam Talbot's birthday.
Really?
Yeah. In 2023-24, he played 54 games. He started 52 of them, played 54 for the LA Kings with a 9.13 save percentage and a 2.50 goals against. The big thing people were trying to say is, well, yeah, that was behind a really, really good LA defense. And LA's defense was better than ours. But if you look at his goals saved above average, which are the goals that he prevented given his save percentage and shots faced, versus the league average save percentage on the same number of shots, he had saved 14 goals above what you would consider the league average. And that's not on defense, that's on him. That's on him being a good goaltender. So when you look at it and you look at his goals against last season at a 2.93 with an 8.98 save percentage in Ottawa, dumpster fire, and his 2021 stats, a 9.11 save percentage and a 2.79 goals against with Minnesota, who is forever, I feel like, going to be an average team. I don't think they'll ever be really good or really bad. They'll always be average. You improve with a guy like Erik Gustafsson. You bring in a defensive guy like Johansson. You have a full season of Edvinsson who will help the defense. We'll talk about Tyler Mott in a minute. You grab Tyler Mott as a defensive, hopefully bottom six grinder who might be a tweener between the AHL and the NHL, but we'll see. And he hasn't played in the AHL for a long time, but people keep saying this is definitely a Griffin signing. I say not. This is all to help eliminate like you said, Ryan, the really high goals against that the Red Wings had last season. And maybe this takes, like I said, he played 54 games last season. If you go 41 Alex Lyon, 41 Cam Talbot, and you can take 10 games off of Lyon's plate or more, like you could tell when Lyon was overextended, and that's when Lyon got overextended the same time Dylan Larkin went down. And that was the nail in the coffin, was that 7-game stretch.
Mm-hmm.
This is a signing that you make to try to avoid that.
It worries me going 3 goalies again, though. No?
I don't think they will. That's the other half
You
of
don't
it is
think
something
so?
has to give. Huso, if they're making a move, I think Huso's gone. They also signed Jack Campbell. Jack Campbell, I think, is a goalie for Grand Rapids to go with Sebastian Cossa. I think Sebastian Cossa gets a starter net. Jack Campbell gets the backup job in Grand Rapids.
I need to ask it on that one. I might be able to get some details on what Campbell is expecting. But it worries me in the sense, though, that Talbot, Huso, Lyon formed the three-headed monster that we did see last season. And because we know that Talbot can eat up a lot of minutes, and I think that's huge because there's consistency there. And we knew with Lyon coming in, I think the worry we called it early, was that he would get worn out potentially. And he did, like you just mentioned. I mean, you could argue one way or the other. Yes, he got hurt in that stretch, but it could have been the fact that he was playing nearly every game. And props to Reimer for what he was able to provide in terms of just a little stability in terms of being healthy throughout the season, because we didn't get it from Huso, and that hurt a lot. And in a way, it might have been better that Lyon didn't get in there until the Sweden series and after, because who knows how he would have been he could have fallen off even sooner. I don't know. It's all semantics at this point. But the biggest thing is they just got to play better in front. And a lot of these guys that they brought in, now does that put at risk that 275 goals for that we saw from last season? Potentially. However, you're getting a full season out of Patrick Kane that we already talked about. That you have to expect that total to go up. But you also did lose a David Perron who still helped put the puck in the net and also facilitate putting the puck in the net. So do we finally see Jonathan Berggren elevate his level to what a Perron was providing? I think that's possible. That's just me personally, based on how I've viewed burgers for all these last several years. But it's a wait and see.
I'm still in the give me Carter Mazer camp on the David Prawn replacement.
Fair. But I'm just saying in terms of point replacement. Maybe not in the style of play, because we know that Burgers is not going to play the same way that David Perron does. Not many guys in the NHL can go head to head with somebody in a corner, win a puck battle, and make things crazy. Burgers has the ability to, but it's not going to be the same. Mazer, to your point, could.
Yeah.
I wonder if Nate Danielson could provide some of that.
He might. I mean, we saw in the preseason last year, he was going into battles like no other.
He's a big enough guy out there to prove himself. I mean, that's kind of the recipe for success. Because I mean, not saying that Marco Kasper can't be that guy, but maybe Nate Danielson could pass him, rather quickly, in my opinion. From what you can see offensively from Danielson. But not to go off on a tangent, but just to touch on the goalies just real quick. It feels like you have 4 goalies for 2 spots. Lyon seems to be the guy that is going to be the 1A. And then you have 3 guys fighting for the 1B. You have Huso, you have Campbell, and you have Cam Talbot. And whoever wins in training camp wins, in my opinion. And then one goes to Grand Rapids or gets waived. The other is the 1B. And then, and then one is traded. Or maybe one is traded sooner rather than later. Or maybe you waive 2 of them. I don't know. I mean, like I said, both of them aren't going to get claimed likely. So I don't know. I mean, the one thing that's interesting, and a lot of people say Jack Campbell, right? A lot of people say Jack Campbell, they write him off. And I agree with you in some aspect, but what if Jack Campbell turns out to be the Jack Campbell he was in Toronto the last couple of years? Could you see him be the 1B next to Alex Lyon? Or what if Alex Lyon's game goes to shit? I mean, unlikely at this point. I mean, he was really good last year until he hit that wall. But it feels like you got 4 goalies for 2 spots. And I don't think they're doing the whole 3 goalie thing again this year.
I don't think they can either. That's we heard it last season, how difficult it was essentially to juggle that, to make sure that guys are getting consistent reps between practice and actual gameplay. And it's, in a way, not fair to them. I get why they ended up doing that, because they didn't want to lose someone through waivers. But now you have to put yourself in the right situation before the rosters have to be set where someone is going down. Maybe that's what happens with Campbell. It's a tricky one because he is making league minimum essentially. So you could potentially lose him, but it's probably less likely that does take place. I don't know. But to me, kind of like to Greg's point, something has to give. Does it have to? Not necessarily, but it just makes sense that something has to give.
It just feels like the roster is incomplete still.
It is.
That's kind of the best way to put it.
Yep.
We're 2 days, not even a complete 2 days as of us recording this into free agency. And
yeah, just remember that Yzerman has not given his post free agency presser yet. That probably won't happen until tomorrow. which means he could still be working on stuff. And as Ryan had pointed out earlier, that the Alex DeBrincat trade was not finished until the 10th of July last season, or 9th of July, whatever. Not today.
9th was when it was the trade went down. Presser was on the 10th with that one, but he held his initial presser last year on July 3rd.
Not day 2 of free agency.
I wonder if you don't hear from Yzerman tomorrow, you're not going to hear from him until Monday.
Oh, totally.
Probably.
Because of the holiday.
Yeah. So the last guy I want to talk about tonight before we sign off, like I said, about an hour ago, the Red Wings signed Tyler Motte. Tyler Motte is 29 years old, 5'10", 194 pounds. Played last season, 69 games. Nice for the Tampa Bay Lightning with 6 goals and 3 assists for 9 points. Tyler Motte is not going to give you offense. What Tyler Motte is going to do is he's going to wear you down, and he is going to be a fast guy who's on the puck, an EV defensive WAR of 88%, 90% on zone entries, 99. He's in the top 1% of penalty killers in the league, 99% for his PK. And this is a guy, like people are saying, it's Christian Fischer 2.0, and then a bunch of people freaked out. That's what you need. Again, defense. This is a bottom 6 dude. If you play him with, like, imagine a line of Michael Rasmussen, Tyler Motte, and Marco Kasper, like something like that. Or if you want to put Tyler Motte, if you're saying we need to bring Berggren in, but we're really worried about the defensive lapses that Berggren has, and he's not good enough to be on the bottom 6 because of how not great he is defensively, I think this is the opportunity where you could make a third line out of Berggren and, say, Kopp and Motte. Like, that's a possibility now because you're offsetting Berggren's defense with a Motte who can make up for that. These are the moves you need to make to balance your roster. You have to take some offense away to add some defense. This is a move that does it. And for everyone that's screaming, he's going to Grand Rapids, this is a Grand Rapids move. He hasn't played in the AHL since 2017-18. He is a valuable defensive piece in the NHL. Like, Tampa would not have played him for 69 games last season if he was an AHL player.
Yeah, this is a guy that you're looking at right now. Looking back, he's had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of his years in the NHL. His percentage of defensive zone starts have been over 70% when it comes to possession metrics. He is like Luke Glendening on steroids, minus the fact that he's not a centerman. So I think overall he's going to help you, like you said, defensively try to bring that goal count down, and they need it. But it's not for a lack of trying at this point, because now you've got for sure several guys that can play on your PK, and I think that's extremely important. But also, just now you've shored up your end of game trying to hold on to a 1-goal lead, guys that are going to be on the ice scenario. Because we already saw the growth from Lucas Raymond last year. He was on those situations late in the season. But now you've got him, a Larkin, you've got a Motte, you've got a Fischer, you've got Kopp and or Comfer to throw out there. Sider. Now you've got a Gustafsson to throw into the mix. We saw Edvinsson get time in on this last year. This is where we could see an Albert Johansson thrive because of the way that he plays defensively. A lot of these things are trying to shore up one side of it to help try to push the other side. So I like it. It's a low risk, potentially high rewarding move. And by high rewarding, I mean puck's not in net potentially.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome your Detroit, Michigan Wolverines, because this is now your number 4 player from Michigan, or is it number 5?
Born in St. Clair.
But no, all kidding aside, I'm just happy we got another Tyler on the team. No, he's a very good
maybe this one will show up.
Defensively responsible player, kind of a meat and potatoes kind of player. And just the kind of player you need to have and to fill out your roster, really. I mean, I know I kind of said that with Gustafsson, but I mean, this, in terms of filling out your bottom 6, I mean, this is a perfect guy. Michigan guy, obviously, but not only just that, but, it should just go to show you the Rangers traded for this guy not once, but twice. The New York Rangers, who, have been one of the better teams in the NHL over the last 4 or 5 years. I've traded for this guy a couple times. He was with the Tampa Bay Lightning last year, another winning franchise. And he played 69 games, as you said. Nice. He's one of those guys that you need to have on your team. And
He's a guy,
I'm not
right? It's like he's a guy.
exactly. He's a guy.
This
but
is a
he's one of
guy.
those guys that's not afraid to block shots. He's not afraid to go into corners. He's not afraid to chip and chase and take a hit to make a play and that kind of thing. And that is the kind of player that if you make the playoffs, he's not going to be the reason why you make the playoffs, but he's going to be a big part of it in terms of killing penalties and certain things like that, in my opinion.
And you know what's huge too to that point? Like he does a lot effectively in a little amount of ice time. His average time on ice for his career is 12:48. So I think what's key there, everything focuses on is how is somebody on the ice? Are they doing things? Or are they actually getting the opportunity? This opens up opportunities to guys that you want to have out there offensively. Like he could be a guy that he's going out there, as I mentioned, 8 years of over 70% defensive start possession. Like that frees things up for guys that you're wanting to see specifically through the neutral zone and the offensive zone. Can he bring you something offensively? Yeah, a little bit. That's why I mentioned Luke Glendening. But there's things that now can take place where you're relying on those top end guys. He's going to be a high pressure player that it could potentially open the door to other guys on the team.
The good thing is too, he can play center, he can play the wing, he can play the penalty kill. He's good in on the forecheck. I know that's important. You see teams like Carolina and teams like
I don't know if
Florida
you play him
that
center, but
use
yeah.
forecheck. And I mean, that is super important, especially in the bottom six to try and, flip the momentum a little bit.
I think to wrap it up, the easiest way to go about it is to say, I don't think Yzerman's done yet. And if he is done, there's some issues. But if he is not, the moves that he has made so far, we've been able to find a purpose in them. And it's an important purpose. It's to make the team better in their own end, to get the puck out quicker, to get it up the ice to the guys that can do the scoring. This is going to be, it's a wake-up call for some people that think we need to be all flash. When you're all flash and no substance, you don't do well. He's building a team right now, and then it will include some rookies, so the people that want rookies are going to be happy. The people that want big flashy signings, you've got a couple seasons because you don't build through free agency, you finish through free agency. And we're not ready to finish our roster. We're still building it. We're figuring out the identity. We're seeing if we pull a couple levers, what happens at the end. So I think we need to take a step back. 2 days into free agency, there's no reason to freak out and just breathe and let Yzerman do the work because we've seen what he can do. People forget that he was a GM in Tampa and actually has built a team before. I think we just need to take a pause, actually reflect on the players that were picked up and how they affect the team, because the teams around us sure as hell didn't get a million times better. And it's...
No, but they didn't really get worse.
There are teams that did absolutely get worse. Several teams that got worse. Ottawa, 100% got worse. Buffalo...
But they re-signed Shane Pinto.
Oh, you're great. Buffalo got worse. Montreal did nothing. Tampa lost big players. Better. Toronto didn't get better.
The teams that were at our level and below, it's whatever. But everyone else, I mean...
Boston got better. Tampa might have gotten better.
Yeah.
That is yet to be seen. But no one got... in our division, no one got substantially better than they were 2 days ago.
That doesn't play into our favor, though. Because arguably, Detroit didn't really change.
It got worse.
We got better defensively.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
So it's subtracting from one and adding
to another.
Hopefully, yeah.
Yeah.
Could in theory make you better,
overall.
When the games start, which I guess is the most important, less important on paper, more important watching the games and actually on the ice. But I don't know. I mean, overall, so far it's kind of a meh off season, but again, it's still kind of incomplete.
So instead of being the team that's going to go out and score 6 goals and let in 5, we might be the team that goes out and scores 4 goals and lets in 2.
That'd be
Or instead
nice.
of scoring 5 goals and letting in 6, we score 3 goals and let in 1. It can lead to more wins. Like, you have to offset it a little bit, but just calm down. It's not over.
There's also a lot of possibility too with some of
Sure.
the younger guys, with Casper, with Danielson,
Yeah.
with some of the other guys, Mazer.
We're going
Like,
to save
there's
it
still,
though, Tyler. We're going to save it for
yeah.
another episode. Ryan, let's get final thoughts before we sign off. We'll be back next Tuesday. I'm not home Monday, so probably Tuesday.
Oh, okay.
Let's do final thoughts, Ryan.
Final thoughts. Let's see. You mentioned the 5 goals allowed last season. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 games of 5 goals or more against last season. That needs to drop. We need to be at 250 goals against or less, I think, to make a significant impact and really to be able to carry this team forward. And the reason I say that is we've seen our goalies just get worn down the last several years. To me, that's impactful. We saw what happened to Husso. I feel bad for Husso because the high that we had with him a couple years ago, and I remember we're talking to Danielle at essentially the midway point, thinking that was our MVP of the season at that stage, and then we saw the fall off. We could argue that again for the following season with what we had for Lyon for several weeks and months, for that matter, and then there was the fall off. We need some consistency, stability there. Hopefully, a guy like Cam Talbot can provide that. And then that can resonate to the other goaltender in the group. That can resonate to the defensive style that the team is trying to go for. Am I overwhelmed and excited about what Detroit's done in the last 48 hours? No. Am I trying to gauge the larger picture by seeing what moves could potentially happen internally? Yes. We mentioned it. Edmondson for a full year. Albert Johansson. Johnny Burgers now has it's his roster spot to lose. Things that we've been clamoring about as a fan base for the last several years for certain players to be playing in the NHL. Put up or shut up time. If it doesn't pan out, then you can truly start questioning some things. But at the same time, we're not even talking about even a well, I shouldn't say we aren't, but we aren't focusing on a Nate Danielson. We're not focusing on a Mazer or a Casper. There's certain guys that now have to earn their way in. Those guys could very well do it. And you know what? That's going to be freaking awesome when they do. But are you willing as a fan to accept the fact that there could be a step back? Maybe it's a step back for a season, but that opens the door and lets the management team know these guys are ready to go balls to the wall and let's make things fun. And that opens the door again to then say, hey, Leon Draisaitl, you are going to get $12 million to be a Detroit Red Wing. Is that going to happen? I really freaking doubt it. But it's fun to think about. That's what we're here for. So we'll see. It's not 48 hours in yet as of this recording, but it's a long off season still. So already around 33.
Yeah, my final the push on that point that this is people say give this off season a grade. It's like it's INC. It's incomplete. You don't know where this is headed yet. So so far it's meh, but I mean that doesn't mean that it can't change in the next 10 minutes. And hell, with our luck, it probably will. But if it does, hey, we'll be happy or we'll be upset with another trade. So who knows? We'll see where that goes. I agree with you, Ryan. This is where the rubber meets the road for a lot of the young guys. This is the time where you have to prove to Steve Yzerman and prove to the staff that they are worthy of making this roster, and not only making this roster, but making an impact on this roster. And that's what will remain to be seen. We'll see where it goes from here. Obviously, there's still a lot of work to be done, but as of right now, we are where we're at. There's a ton of prospects, but prospects are just that until they can finally make their mark on the NHL and keep themselves there. Other than that, I'm looking forward to seeing you guys on Thursday, October 10th for the opener against the Pittsburgh Penguins. I will be there. So you can follow me on Twitter at SealDog91.
You can follow us on Twitter at GrindlinePod. We'll give a shout out to the Hockey Podcast Network for hosting us and spreading our podcast around. To Vintage Detroit, where we have our exclusive t-shirt collection over there. You can go to vintagedetroit.com and find it under the Keep It Local tab. Is also the only place you should get your Detroit jerseys from and worked on. They're the absolute best. Only go to Vintage Detroit for that stuff. You can sub to us on YouTube. Go to YouTube, search the Grindline Podcast, sub to us, turn on the notifications. You'll get notified every time an episode goes live. But that is going to do it for us tonight. So for Ryan and Tyler, I am Greg. You stay classy, Hockey Town.